Hello out there, Student Fusion. Most of you know me, but for anyone that might be watching that does not know who I am, my name is Todd Wheeler, and I've been involved in the student program at Pleasant Valley South for a lot of years now. And I've been asked to share my testimony. And if you know me, you know I can talk for a really long time, really easily. So to keep this in the time frame that it needs to be in, what I'm going to do is, to me, I feel like our testimony is a book, and it begins when we accept Christ as our Savior, and then it continues until we join God in heaven. And what I'm going to do right now is I'm just going to pull a couple of pages out of that book and share with you something really significant and really cool that God did for me. It's been probably 15 years or so ago now, and I reached a point in my life where I thought that I wanted to teach, or actually it was more than that. I felt like I had a calling to teach. So I started exploring that possibility. I mean, even as far as, going to a couple of colleges and getting information on going back to school and, getting my degree to teach. So I did the legwork, and then I went to my dad, who isn't just my dad, but owns the company that I work for. And I told him, what I felt like I was needing to do. And he supported me in that. But he also told me, just so you know, if you leave the company, I'm going to have to sell it. And he wasn't trying to lay a guilt trip on me. My dad would have just done something else. He was just letting me know, okay, this means, the company's not going to be here anymore. That gave me a lot of things to talk about because there were employees involved other than just myself and my dad. So I decided not to go back to school for teaching. And I was actually kind of depressed for a while because I felt like there was something inside me telling me I needed to do this, and I didn't do it. Well, along about that time, my son Brant, most of you know Brant, finished up 5th grade and was getting ready to head to 6th grade. And it was time for him to be able to go on his first trip with the church, first summer trip. And it just so happened it was big stuff at Panama City Beach. Well, we had him all set to go. Everything was paid and all this kind of stuff. And there, on the Saturday before he was supposed to leave on Sunday, my wife and my mother started having concerns about him going off on the trip without a parent, just being gone that long for a first time or whatever. And that's fine. I mean, I completely get that, and I won't say that hadn't crossed my mind also. But on Saturday, my wife asked me, will you go on the trip with him if Benji has a spot left? And begrudgingly, I'll admit, I said, all right, see if he's got a spot. Well, got in touch with Benji, and he had a spot. Well, at this point in my life, I had no desire to go to a youth conference. I mean, I wasn't looking forward to the music at that time, which has changed now, but at that time, I was not into contemporary Christian or praise and worship music or anything like that at all. But I was going because I was a parent and I needed to go. So I show up at the gym the next morning to get ready to leave for the trip. And I haven't been there 5 minutes, and here comes Benji walking towards me with keys saying, hey, can you drive a van? I'm like, man, I didn't even want to go on this trip. Now I'm driving a van. So we load up, and I'm going to make a long story pretty short. But we get down there, and we're in the very first session. And I remember one of the songs that they did in that session, which I had never even heard before, was called Lead Me to the Cross. And it was like God switched or flipped a switch in me. And at that moment, I knew what I was supposed to be doing. Yes, I was supposed to be teaching. Yes, I was supposed to be working with kids, those kids. So we get back from that trip, and I wasn't teaching at that point. I had taught previously, but I wasn't teaching at that point. So the rest of that summer, I just hung around in the gym. I felt I need to be around these kids. So I hung around in the gym. And when the next school year came around, a month or two later, there was an opening to teach. And I took that opening, and that was when Brant was going into 6th grade, and I've been teaching ever since. And, that's a cool thing, because it talks about God doing something for me, and me, finding out, that this is what he had for me and doing that. But there's even more to that story. The first part of it is, there's a verse in the Bible, and it's in Isaiah 6:8, and the last part of that verse is where he says, "Here I am, Lord, send me." If we don't have that attitude, a lot of the things that God has for us, we'll never know that he has them. I didn't want to go on that trip, and I definitely really didn't have a, "Here I am, Lord, send me." I mean, I was not gung-ho, but I went. God showed me something on that trip, but here's what else happened. A couple of years later was when we had a big, we had a recession, whatever. But anyway, there wasn't a lot of money going around the way it had been. So teachers that were in school systems started getting laid off. And, the way it worked out, if I had have gone ahead and gone back to school and gotten that degree and started teaching, I would have been in my 1st or 2nd year maybe of teaching at that point when they started having to lay teachers off. With me having been one of the newest ones, in the job, I would have been one of the first to go. And at that point, I would have had no job. I would have had no income. God knew what was best for me. He knew that I needed to be working with kids, but it was in his time, in his place, and the way he was going to lay it out. And that's kind of the second part of that story, is it's God's timing. We've got to wait on him. His time is not our time, either in how long it feels like it takes or in the planning. So we've got to have faith in him that whatever needs to be done and whatever we need to do, he's going to do it, and he's going to reveal it to us. Just have to wait. And if we do, the reward is going to be much greater than if we try to just go out and do something on our own. So that's a page, maybe a chapter, I guess, from my testimony. But I mentioned testimony being like a book that's still being written. Here's the thing you have to remember, though. Lots of books have a thing called a foreword, and in that foreword, it either explains, maybe the reason for the book, who the book's dedicated to, or whatever. Well, the foreword in our book of our testimony is salvation. And unless we recognize that we need salvation, that we are sinners, that we are separated from God, and that the only way to bridge that separation to him is through accepting Jesus Christ as our Savior, we've got a book that's never going to be written. He can write it for us, but unless we accept him, we don't let him. So just remember, if you haven't made that decision, if you haven't accepted Christ, it's not just about getting into heaven. It's not just about what some people call, and I hate, fire insurance. It's about the rewards, the blessings, the magnificent life that God has waiting out there for you. That all hinges on accepting Christ. Appreciate you taking the time to watch this. If you need to speak to someone, if you have not accepted Christ, there's leaders all over our church that are available to you by any means you can think of. Love you guys. See you later.